So in this video I would like to show you now how we can create the materials and then do a rendering. And we will use this photo as a reference to recreate. This is also in general a very good practice when you're new to industrial design and you need to build up your technical expertise in modeling and rendering, to pick very simple objects based on your skill level and then try to model them and then use the photo to recreate the rendering, because the photo teaches you a lot. It, for example, tells me there's a very strong light in the back because there is a shadow inside, and there's also a key light on the right side. You see the left side is kind of darkish, so it creates a nice contrast and your eyes really are drawn to the bright areas. Also, it tells me here how much reflectivity do I only see, how much I do not see of reflectivity here. So this helps me to understand maybe how to adjust even the materials. Because this is a smaller image I found online, I also opened an image of a product from Leland International, because there you can nicely, for example, see also the layered material. So with this bent plywood, obviously we don't, in contrast to a 3D wood, we don't deal with a three-dimensional material. We deal basically with the front and bottom veneer and then with an image that describes the layering. Okay, so let's take a look at the blend file. You see I just I created a new version. I called this one Bent Plywood Stool Render, and I deleted everything else besides the last step. Okay, so before we continue, let's go back to here. We see that we have a top veneer or a bottom veneer, and then we have an image for the sides. So I have, for example, here a birch veneer I downloaded, and then there I have an image of a bent plywood, kind of like all the different layers. If you go online, you can find a lot of different examples. This one has a little bit of a highlight here, which makes it less usable. This is more uniform. That's a scan I did of a product piece. This one actually works a lot better. So in Blender, the way how we created this design was by using a flat sheet. Then we add geometry details, we bend it, we give it a thickness, and then we cut, for example, the leg out, and then at the end we decided to round the edges a little bit. And I use a very basic chamfer, just a bevel with a setting of 1. The problem there is, while I have now a three-dimensional object, I don't have, when I go into edit mode, faces at the sides I could select to map this texture onto. So what we have to do in this case is actually apply the solidify modifier. So I will turn off, for example, the boolean modifier and the bevel, and then the solidify modifier I just have to apply. So for the render model, that's just normal. Click apply, and then there is our part. This actually remains nice and straight, also because the subdivision uses simple and not Cut-Mold-Clark. If I use this one, you see then it's round. If we use Cut-Mold-Clark, not a big deal. What we simply have to do is not this one. We need to select all those edges that basically define the box, and then press N and crease it. So we sharpen the edges back. Perfect. Good. See, now it's pretty much the same. If we would cut the space out, there it's cut out. Okay, Good. So that was kind of like step one. In edit mode, I will under mesh display turn off the visibility for creases, but turn on the visibility for seams. Because when we deal here with the top and the bottom veneer and then the images for the sides, so what I'm talking about is everything I'm selecting here right now, this geometry will have to get this texture mapped onto it. So later we get this look. And then everything else, so these top surfaces will need to have this texture mapped onto it. So what we will do is we will select all those edges, including also here those vertical edges at these corners. That's fine. And then Control E, or I think it's under Mesh, Edge, and then Mark Seam. So similar to the upholstery exercise where we try to unfold it so we can then map the texture on it and then sew it back together, we kind of like have to do the same here for the wood. And this basically goes back to what I said in class, that digital rendering tool does not have a material for metal and a unique material for wood or something. We just deal with materials and different properties. So the steps are always the same, but then by the settings and the images we use, we give the viewer the illusion of a certain material. So mark seam. So now you see actually all the seams along the top and the bottom. So, okay, good. Now, how do I do this? This one I want to see all the time. This one as well. But I only want to have one image UV editor open. So what I can do now is, first I can select everything. For example, press U and unwrap. And just realized screencast weren't turned on. There they are. Okay, good. Now this is actually unwrapped, but you see it's using this this image, which is not correct. So we can go to Image, Open, and I will go to Design Resources, Textures, Birch Veneer. There. Okay. Perfect. Good. Now I have to also create a material for this one, so I could go to here, slice this open, make a new material, and we just create the diffuse information first. So texture coordinates, image, UV, color, and then here we load the birch veneer. Okay, and we can take a look how this works. Okay, this is maybe okay right now. So maybe still actually I will slice this one because I still should see, no, not this one, but just this one. So I can get kind of like a feeling if maybe the sizes are okay. And this is a tricky part, kind of like understanding how big a wood texture would be in real life, which is why I really suggest you to always find examples, or if you see a piece of furniture that has veneer over it, take a photo of it. Okay, so but it seems that this texture size-wise is close. Maybe I want to add a little bit more of my texture into it. So what I will do is press L onto this one and this one, Shift L, and then L. So now I selected in the UV editor the top and the bottom face. S and Y, I can scale them apart a little bit. G and Y, and move them up. So you see that I will force more of the veneer image onto my geometry. And then I try to get the proportion similar to that. For example, this is size-wise similar to maybe something like this. Okay, perfect. Good. And then based on where we put those individual elements to, I can slide this one down. So maybe there now we see a little bit more of the lower part of the image instead of the top one. Here we have more lines. Here we have more, a little bit of distorted cathedrals. Okay, so maybe let's call this one veneer surface. Good. So now we have to take a look at these sides. We created the top part, but the sides, well, it looks like I took a veneer and glued it on it. It's a quick hack, but it's not really accurate. Plus this piece is bent, and the veneer looks like I glued a really big piece like in front, and then I cut everything else away. It would be a huge waste of material. Plus I really would like to see this layering, and that is now where this other texture, the plywood edge, comes in handy. So far when we created a material, we added the material to the complete object. So this veneer surface, I will give, for example, a small color so you can see where it is applied to. So now the whole object is yellowish. But along the bent side, I would like now to have this other texture. So to do this, we can create a new slot, create a new material. Maybe we call this one bent plywood layers. And then here, let's add an image texture and texture coordinates, and then we will load this image. Okay. So now here, let's also open this one. And this I will give a different color. Maybe like this, a little bit darker. There. And you don't really see anything happening. Well, the thing is, when you have an object and you create then a material, the material is applied to all the faces of the mesh. And you see now in edit mode, there's always here this assign, select, and deselect popping up. So what I can do now is I only select this ring of faces, select bent plywood, and then I click assign. And now you see actually these sides have a different color. If I go to material preview, there you see something else is going on. So you see this way we can tell the software take this material or image and apply it onto the geometry. Take this other material with the image texture applied to the other set of faces. And because my object is built flat, this is a very easy task to do. And then the bend command just stretches everything into the shape I want. So I have to figure out now the correct position and the scale for these faces. So in the image editor, when I zoom in, there you see there is my one line, the other line, and here are the two faces at the bottom. All respectively, they're here and there. Okay. So what I have to do Let's go back here to material preview. AA, select everything, R90, enter. Okay. And this is now a little trick. We, in the image editor, deselect everything, select one, and then let's say I would like to snap to vertex. So G and snap to maybe this vertex, U and U, G to somewhere else, G and snap also to there. So I hold Control. Okay, so now all these faces are all overlapping. That's okay, because they're all at different faces. I also down here have sharp edges, so not a big deal. And now I can, with S, for example, scale this one up, G and Y, move it down, S, scale this up more. Okay, make this maybe wider. Okay, now a little bit cleanup maybe to do. I switch to point select. With B, select all these points, S, X, and 0, so they all have the same edge, S, X, and 0. And now I can go to the snap to pixels. By the way, to scroll this interface, you can use your mouse wheel. So now I snap to the pixels in the UV editor, G and X. So I move it along the x-axis to there. So I perfectly can position now where I want my mesh to start and end. Okay, AA. S and Y, we scale it more apart. Tick up S and Y, so I maximize the use of the image texture. And then when I go to there, now I can see actually from a distance there's a nice layered material added to it. But there we can see that is correct. There it doesn't line up. That's interesting. And also there it is this way and there. Interesting. Okay. This all looks fine. Okay. Well, I have to see what actually caused this. Technically speaking, they all should be the same. So hold on. We can go to edit mode, turn the sub-D on if we want, and we can turn the curve thing on so we see all the different faces. So there's number one. Okay, and I will try this one out. I will rotate this face 180 degrees. See there, now it matches better. Okay, what about there? It doesn't match there. Okay, what's up with this position? That matches. Okay, good. Let's go back to edit mode. And now I would like to select this face, this face, this, and this. Okay. And I could rotate it, or I think Control M and then X will flip it. So I don't rotate it, I just mirror it. So now you see I switched the directions of the material, and now here also they all line up perfectly. Good. Great. And that's the reason why when I had all these faces, I scaled all the left and the right edges to the same position so that they all occupy the same width of the image. And you see then this way, later this nicely lines up. Perfect. This is good. Okay. So this is kind of like step one. Now we have textured the top part and the side, and what's left is to take this cut space into consideration. So maybe for the moment, so this runs faster, we'll set this to 2. This will look kind of crappy, but that's fine. All this upper area is done, so there's no point in looking at this with a higher view level because this is perfect. This job is finished. We can set this to 2. So when we turn off or on boolean commands, it calculates much faster. So what's going on there? We don't really have the same wood layer being actually cut into there. So this is not really super ideal. So how or what are the methods we could use to get to the same result? Well, there are 2 ways. First, these objects currently are pretty big, so I overbuilt them quite sufficiently, and I can try to get them closer to their GXX, so along local space, and also here G and then XX along local space, or I use the arrow key, get this close. Because for the boolean command I only need a very tiny overlap, and then that's enough. Okay, perfect. See, when this object, for example, is inside, then it just cuts this space out. So overbuilding again. And now the trick is that I have to give a texture to this part so that it runs across this area. And to do that, I need to see also the texture of this part. Okay, let's go into edit mode. I will select this edge, this, and this corner and this corner. The upper corner here I leave, that's fine. And then Control E, mark seam, that's fine. And I will give this object also this bent plywood layer material. But then we don't really see anything yet, because after having the edges creased, AA to select everything, you unwrap. There. Perfect. Or not. We have some gibberish here. So the faces really of importance are those 3 in our case, and they're there. So you see here, all we need to do, select these points, SX0, GX, snap it over, select those, SX0, and there at the end. Perfect. Let's take a look. Yeah, this looks already much better. But now we have this garbage that's going on here. And that actually is because of the bevel modifier. But before we continue, I wanted to go back to here, and because I scaled this object that cuts the surface nearly to the same size, you can see that the lines nearly perfectly line up, and that's good enough. In case I do not, then I might have to, for example, here, let's try this. I move this a little bit out further, and there. There you see now this definitely doesn't work. So how do we fix this? So I will select these faces here again. And then in the UV editor, I can either leave it the way how it is, or AA, S and X, for example, scale this till kind of like, as you can see, the textures starts to line up. Perfect. Because this object is wider than the bent plywood piece, I have to make it occupy more of the space. Alternatively, we could also use the mapping mode, which maybe is a tick cleaner to do. So mapping mode, put it in there, and then along X, that's the scale factor. But you see, I'm adjusting actually the other mesh as well. So, and I don't really want to have in addition a new material just for this Boolean object, which is why in this situation here, I simply do it this way. There. Perfect. Maybe S and Y, give it a little bit more of that bent plywood material. Okay, good. Nice. Perfect. So, but how do we deal with this stupid situation up here? And again, as I mentioned, this comes from the bevel modifier. But interestingly, what I found was when we delete this face and delete this face, watch it, bang, it's nice and clean. But now we have this opening, not a big deal. We select these faces or edges and fill it back. It will be filled with some gibberish, not a big deal. There. Amazing. Okay, nice and perfect. Let's go back now to our object here. Let's go into edit mode, switch back to object mode, and let's see what we have there. Let's set this maybe to 4. Okay. There's something interesting going on here, but you notice actually, hey, this texture from this object got carried over to there. And there's something else I would like to show, in addition to it, how this works. So I will make a new material. You see this has 2 users, the bent plywood stool and this object. Let's click the 2. And let's say bent plywood layers Boolean object. And this one I will give a nice red color. Okay. And you see here right now, this is all the same color. And now I will create a new material slot and then say bent plywood layers. And you see now this is red. So what happens is, because these 2 surfaces are applied to certain selections of the geometry. See, when I press A, select veneer, click select, it selects all these faces. If I press A, select bent plywood layers, click select, it selects the faces that use that material. So these 2 materials are applied to certain faces, which is why you see the colors. But the Boolean cut surface is created by the Boolean command, by using this object. So when we simply add then the material in a new slot that comes from the Boolean object, Blender will colorize that area with that Boolean material. That's the reason why you see that as red. If you go now to material, I'm going to hate you. This should actually have worked. Okay, this is interesting. And interesting, hold on, maybe there's something else going on. Okay, let's do a test render. Still a problem. So let me pause for a second, because normally that shouldn't happen. And I already figured it out just a second afterwards, because I forgot one thing. So we work with Blender 2.78 and it has 2 new Boolean libraries to do the calculations. We have Carve and we have Bmesh. Carve is the old one and Bmesh is the new one. And Bmesh in general, similar to Infusion with the solid, likes to work with volumes, not with surfaces. But if I now click to B-mesh, ding ding, there it is. I think this also means if, hold on, I'm curious, if I turn this off, okay, this is gone, that's fine, no worries. And bend plywood material, let's go back, ching ching, yeah, even works this way. So if I don't want to create a new specific material, you see we can even do it this way. So this actually, because my boolean object uses the same material as the side here, I don't have to create a new boolean material in this case. So let's actually zoom in there, and you see there's a tiny offset. So to perfect this, what we could do is maybe let's rotate to there, select this object, GXX, and maybe try to move this object till the texture parts line up. And then there we are, much better. Again, there are still some problems with the texture, but this is just a rendering, and in digital rendering you always have to take or make compromises. You will not get it 100% realistic. The goal, however, is always to get it as realistic as possible so it becomes believable, and then most times the difference in terms of accuracy the viewer might not actually really see. Okay, so we now tackled the problem of also texturing the surface of the boolean area. Before we continue, one more time with the carve library, I'm 100% sure you want not to have something like this, so an open face, because I think now this bloop will turn into this, because it's just a surface. So the carve library it needs solid volumes for the stuff. Then it cuts it out. Okay, perfect. Also, let's visit our best friend, save, so we don't lose any hard work. So far so good. Let's take a look at one of the missing details, those blue legs. So how can we do this? Well, we know that actually when we have these different materials, we could go into edit mode, make a loop cut, then add a new material, new, and say maybe this is blue, and then we select all those faces, say assign, and then there we have the blue color. But you see, because we use actually a subdivision surface modifier and we also bend it, yeah, how do we control where maybe this starts and stops? We can adjust this, but then the texture is also being stretched because maybe I moved these points. So this is not really very ideal. And in addition, you even see there this material doesn't have the blue, and also inside there I don't have the blue. So not really good. So what would be a different way how to do it? So what we can do instead is we will make a copy of this object and then we will slice it. So Shift S, cursor to the center. Let's add a plane, scale it down. Let's move it up, maybe as much as needed, something like this. Okay, and then let's select this object here. Where's a boolean modifier? We will switch to carve difference, this plane, and then this plane, for example, we can set to wire and call leg trim. Okay, perfect. So this works pretty good. We can select this object. Now there's one one problem. In case this object would just have a generic color, then we could use the Alt D, so we make a linked object. But because we have two different materials which are all applied to faces, so not just to the whole object, we can't really make use of that. So what I'm talking about, before we continue, let me do something like this. I will create a small cube there, and then this cube I will give to the object, for example, a red material. Okay, there, perfect. So Alt D, I make a copy, and then I say to the object, well, no, I want actually a blue material. Okay, so this object I could split via the boolean modifier, carve, intersect there, and there's the red object. This one, boolean modifier, carve, different, this object. Okay, so what you see now is basically two objects. I split them, and each object has an object not mesh based material. And you see when I select, let's say, this edge, it is the same mesh data, so cube, and the materials are however not applied to the mesh but to the objects. So that's in this case unfortunately going to be a problem, so we can use a small workaround. Texturing in general is a lot about trickery. So what I was talking about, we could say Alt D, so we make a clone, and then this clone there we say, instead of difference, intersect, so you know we have the leg parts, and here now we would say make a new material, let's say blue, and let's pick this color. Okay, but we don't see it. Well, we said like, well, maybe we can add it to the object. Okay, let's make it blue. Oh, we still don't really see anything else, and that's because, well, we have these other materials there. Well, what happens if maybe we delete these materials from this object? Well, because these materials were linked to the data, now this one also has no materials. Well, okay, let's link it back to the object. So this is maybe the layer, and object, this is now the veneer surface. Okay, but let's go to material. There you still see this is actually not blue. Let's try to render this. See, it's still gray. So unfortunately, you see it does not really work as in the way how we want. Well, what happens if maybe we move this one up? Let's go to here. Whoa, no, we have blue. That's interesting. Let's take one out. It's maybe there. Now we see a little bit of blue, but we have these other two elements here, so maybe we take this off and this off. Whoa, now our whole object is blue again. So you see, unfortunately the software simply gets confused, and that's more than normal. It's understanding, because texturing is just a tricky task. So here, let's bring these elements back. Okay, I lost actually the information for that, so I will quickly undo the steps till I'm back to here, there, and this one I will delete. Let's take a look. Okay, good. And that's what I wanted. So this object here, so the small leg stump, unfortunately I cannot be part of a shared mesh data, I have to make this one, in this case, individual. And then I can give this a blue material. Here now I can remove those, and now everything fits. Okay, see, that's fine. Maybe let's turn on the light a little bit. There. Okay, well, there's only one problem. If I go ahead and, for example, this one I move up, see, then this also works. And why did I say there's a problem? Because, oh, yeah. So this actually works. So we can adjust the height of the leg. So that works quite nice. But if maybe I want to deform, let's see, this, does this work? Ching. Yeah, this works as well. So, yeah, so there we are still good. So where's the drawback? Well, the thing is, this is a mesh on its own, and this is a mesh object on its own. If I make this one, for example, bigger, there you see, this one does not follow it. So that's the only drawback. But ideally, when we go to rendering, you are at a position where you don't really want to adjust the material thickness that much anymore. For example, here with this bent plywood, and in case we have to adjust the whole thickness a little bit, then well, we would go to this one and do the same adjustment so they match. And ideally, we want to do this adjustment without, for example, seeing the deformation. So you see now there I can select there. No, wait. Let's go to this view. This is too confusing. So there now I can move this one up so they all match, and then I turn on all the modifiers again. Okay. So let me undo the steps till we are here. So this is basically one of the drawbacks when we make a full copy, but not really just an interactive copy. But you saw it's not really going to be a major problem. When we plan ahead carefully, we can then in this way still explore maybe the coding of the material, because interactively we are slicing the two objects. And we always maintain a nice sharp edge. Okay, this looks pretty close to there. Good, that was now everything about texturing, and then in the next one I will show the rendering, how we recreate kind of like this quick shot.